future at the very least. Leading experts and analysts are actively underscoring its global ramifications and its impact on global politics and the economy. According to many assessments, we are dealing with a paradigm shift and tectonic changes. Perhaps we are. Only time will tell. And unfortunately, the pandemic has clearly shown that the international community that we talk about so much was, at the peak of the crisis, essentially unable to meet the hopes placed upon it. Clearly, the prevailing thinking was that this is a challenge best addressed individually. Practically everyone battened down the hatches, closed their borders, and cut off contact with the outside world. In response to this challenge, Belarus didn't choose what we sought to be a dubious path. We didn't shut down, we did not isolate ourselves. We immediately wondered what then was the point in us promoting globalization and openness over recent decades. From the outset, we believed and continue to believe in the success of collective efforts. We believed in and continue to believe in the potential of the international community. Unfortunately, some countries chose to use the method of accusing others of acting wrongly in the fight against the pandemic. This was for the simple reason that the international community did not draw up a common approach. The problem, probably, then lies not so much in the pandemic as elsewhere. In the situation before us, specific national contexts have become a determining factor in the fight against coronavirus. We in Belarus chose to forge our own path. This was based on two factors: how to keep the country running in the best possible way, primarily for its economy, and ensuring our people are best protected. Our approach, as the situation in Belarus has shown, has proven its worth, and the spread of coronavirus around the world today is further confirmation of this. There are a lot of evaluations and conclusions still to be made, but we can already say with certainty that the COVID outbreak has, on the one hand, shed light on the acute need for a stronger state, and on the other hand, has clearly shown how interconnected the world is. No country alone can make real progress in solving problems that are global in scale, if other countries remain sidelined or left out. Through our joint efforts, we must transform this crisis into an opportunity to improve the situation around the world. We need to learn to work together. The pandemic has temporarily shifted focus away from other global problems and conflicts, including security problems, which regrettably are not falling in number. In this anniversary year for the UN and 75 years after the end of the Second World War, the Republic of Belarus, as one of the founders of the UN, is calling for particular responsibility to be demonstrated by member states, first and foremost by the members of the Security Council, for the functioning of our organisation and the fulfilment of its role. In this connection, I wish to recall one of the leading figures in the UN, former Secretary General and Nobel Peace Laureate Sir Dag Hammarskjöld. This year marks 115 years since his birth. He is believed to have been the one who inspired and tirelessly advocated for preventive diplomacy. Dag Hammarskjöld, who died carrying out his mission to find a solution to a grave crisis, believed that only mutually respectful dialogue and honest negotiations between parties to a given conflict at its early stages can prevent a conflagration. This is something that is lacking in today's world. We have forgotten what dialogue is, and if we manage to remember, then we have surely forgotten how to use it. I must mention that for several years now, Belarus has been actively calling for a renewed broad dialogue on international security in order to solve disagreements in intergovernmental relations. This dialogue could put back on track the building of a just and effective multilateral global order. With this in mind, Belarus is supporting and promoting pragmatic initiatives at the UN, focused on maximising the organisation's potential in terms of maintaining international peace and security. This year we will once again table at the General Assembly and the First Committee, with broad co-sponsorship from like-minded states, a resolution on a prohibition of new types of weapons of mass destruction. This resolution traditionally enjoys universal support from practically all UN member states. We invite all states to co-sponsor and endorse it. Going back to the anniversary of the end of the Second World War, I wish to underscore our deep conviction as one of the countries who suffered the greatest losses. We must preserve the memory of those tragic lessons learnt from the most horrifying catastrophe of the 20th century. This memory must remain a key element of our collective immunity against the emergence of global and regional confrontations. As stated in the UN Charter, our organisation was founded to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. Cooperation based on UN Charter principles is the only alternative to natural selection and the survival of the fittest. Taking into account modern technologies and information capabilities, which are now available not only to states but also to non-state actors, we must be fully aware of the risks of political, economic and military confrontation, irresponsible competition and the bullying of countries that are out of favour. And one more important point. We note with regret the increasing attempts by a series of countries to abuse the UN platform, including the Security Council, to further their own narrow political interests. This includes some Western nations focusing their attention on the situation in Belarus, which indeed has become complex by dint of circumstances imposed upon us, primarily from elsewhere. I would recall that in August of this year, the people made their choice during the presidential elections in the Republic of Belarus. They chose a stable and prosperous state. They chose peace and good neighbourly relations. They chose sustainable development. However, rather than respecting this choice, we are seeing attempts to destabilise the situation in the country. Following unsuccessful attempts to impose colour revolutions on us, we are now experiencing external interference, aiming to undermine the very construction of our state. Statements brimming with cynicism have been made by a series of our Western colleagues about their alleged concern for Belarusian sovereignty and well-being. In actual fact, they are nothing other than attempts to bring chaos and anarchy to our country, to make Belarus lose many years of development. We call on our partners to demonstrate wisdom, restraint and impartiality. Interference in our internal affairs, sanctions and other restrictions on Belarus will have the opposite effect and are harmful for absolutely everyone. We have been through this already in the past. The future of the Republic of Belarus will be decided by its own people, as has been shown on more than one occasion over our country's history. The future is not to be decided at the barricades, but through civilised dialogue, including through the process of constitutional reform, which has already begun. I wish to highlight once again that we strongly reject any use of unilateral coercive measures in international relations. A blatant example of this is the decades-long trade, financial and economic blockade of Cuba by its northern neighbour. The maintaining of these suffocating instruments of pressure on sovereign states, even without the coronavirus pandemic, is a particular threat and is fraught with irreversible consequences. Trade wars, arbitrary financial and economic sanctions to lever political pressure must end. Another important topic is the health of the global economy. Today it is seriously faltering. The pandemic is threatening to nullify everything achieved since we adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It has become ever clearer that the post-COVID era will necessitate a change in how we approach socio-economic development. Belarus supports proposals that focus on increasing investment in healthcare, infrastructure and education, and broad access to digital technology and sound management of natural resources. We share those approaches that revitalise the economy through greening our economic models. For our part, Belarus is continuing its journey towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals from the 2030 Agenda. Our country's efforts are focused on striking a balance between economic development and environmental protection, and promoting the green economy and smart cities concept, and developing precision agriculture. This work is being done with the involvement of all domestic stakeholders and in close cooperation with our international partners. It is indeed partnership between all players, both on a national and international level, that for us is a key factor in accelerating the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Belarus, as a middle-income country, is certain that in order to successfully achieve the SDGs, for this category of countries, we need a separate Sustainable Development Strategy of the UN, much like there are similar documents for other groups of developing countries. In conclusion, I would like to mention one simple but important pearl of worldly wisdom, that every cloud has a silver lining. We are bearing witness to life-changing events. Indeed, 2020 has been an unusual year for the whole year, forcing humanity to rethink how it lives its life. In our view, a new page in history is being written. The world will not be the same as it was before. In learning our lessons, we must not carry the mistakes of our past into our future. We must build a new world that is people-friendly, free from wars and conflicts, one that is sustainable, predictable and happy. A world that is armed with the benefits of technological progress and uses it for development, not for destruction. These days we hear no little criticism of the UN. Sometimes it is justified, sometimes not. Belarus naturally shares the following idea. The organisation must move with the times. We need an effective Security Council which will put an end to the numerous wars and armed conflicts, including through taking into account preserving of territorial integrity and complying with the norms of international law. We want to see a more active General Assembly, one that takes important decisions in a timely fashion on a whole range of pressing global problems. We are all keen to see the Economic and Social Council and the whole UN development system provide more effective assistance to states in achieving the SDGs. In evolving with the times, the organisation will remain necessary to all people, all over the world. The Republic of Belarus was a signatory to the UN Charter, and it took on the responsibility to assist in fulfilling the fundamental purposes of the organisation. Our country will continue to work to maintain and build on the unifying and creative origins of the United Nations. Thank you for your attention.
On behalf of the General Assembly,